Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of World Talks here on TVP World, where every word matters. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee. Please join me and my guest on this next interview. Now, the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy is set to attend a key Ramstein meeting, where he is expected to urge allies to provide additional long-range missiles and air defense systems. As Russian airstrikes intensify, Zelenskyy seeks to lift restrictions on using Western weapons for strikes deep into Russian territory. With over 50 nations participating in the Ukraine Defense Contract Group, the stakes are high for securing new military aid to sustain Ukraine's defense efforts. Joining us today on TVP World to discuss this is Jacek Raubo from Defense 24 Analysis Unit. Hello, sir, and welcome to TVP World.
Hello, and thank you for having me.
So can you help us first understand how critical is this Ramstein meeting for Ukraine's ongoing war effort?
The answer for your question is the presence of President Zelenskyy, because we know that when he is coming somewhere, there is important issues on the agenda of such a kind of meetings. So I think this is a very iconic information for us that this meeting might be a very difficult for Ukraine, not only from the military side, but mostly from the political field, because we know about the reconstruction of the government. We know about a lot of question marks coming toward the situation inside our society. So I think this is not only focusing on the military meeting. So of course, we can discuss some parts of military agenda, but we need to remember that in behind of this talks, we are still watching a lot of debates about the status of Ukrainian society and Ukrainian government.
Right, so there is a lot of underlying political elements involved. And speaking of political elements, there's also recent reports from Politico stating that the surge in Harris's polling number is actually incentivizing a hold in providing this $50 billion aid to Ukraine. Their argument is that with Biden's kind of Trump-proof policy perhaps not needing to kick in, there's less incentive to do so. Do you think that this upcoming meeting between Zelenskyy and perhaps Lloyd Austin do you think this will be on the agenda?
Truly, there is no, I think, question about it, because in the United States, we see a very hard campaign with a lot of actions from both candidates, not only from Kamala Harris, but also from Donald Trump. And some of them are really focused on the international relations field. So I think a present government, a present administration would like to present this forum and this U.S. Military assistance to Ukraine as a very effective tool for the global agenda of United States. And also at the same time, they want to balance some of U.S. participation in the context of criticism coming from the opposition inside U.S., because we cannot cover that there is a lot of negative emotions inside U.S. electors about this long-term support to Ukraine. And we know that some of the right side critics coming from this point of view to try erase the position of Kamala Harris and Joe Biden as effective administration, effective White House administration. So, of course, I think they would like to present both things. That U.S. is, of course, very careful and looking on every dollar which is put into the military assistance to Ukraine. But on the other hand, with this military assistance, I think government and administration want to present that U.S. is really effective when we think about countering this Russian pressure against Ukraine and against their sovereignty. So it is also a very difficult and very comprehensive meeting for a U.S. side. We talked before about these difficulties coming from the Ukrainian side, but here we have the same. I have the same feeling about U.S. presence in Ramstein group.
Right. Well, we're on the topic of these difficulties when it comes to these particular discussions, having to juggle the situation in Ukraine as well as its own domestic politics. Do you think there's any way that Zelensky will be able to convey to Lloyd Austin that this is absolutely necessary, and in a way that might also be convincing enough for the U.S. electorate for that to not be a detriment for Harris's poll numbers?
From my point of view, I think we will see a kind of achievements in strengthening, of course, Ukrainian defense with additional packages and additional support, because this is something obvious when we see the group of states which are right now accept this strengthening of Ukrainian military against Russian aggression. So I'm very pragmatic in defining the achievements. Of course. So I want to be sure that, of course, Ukrainians will receive more munition, more missiles. But on the other hand, I'm not so sure that we will see a revolution in this support. So you mentioned before our chat that there is a strong position of two aspects in this agenda. First is a long precision strikes against Russian bases, Russian infrastructure with Western weaponry. On the other hand, there is a strengthening of air defense. With these strikes, I'm a little bit skeptical. I hope my assuming is wrong. But on the other hand, I'm much more optimistic about strengthening air defense. But on the other hand, there is no optimistic vision to the whole Ukrainian population, because even with new packages of missiles and even systems like we have had from the Romanian side, there will be no resources to cover whole Ukrainian territory, all Ukrainian cities with effective shields and multi-layer shields when we think about air and missile defense. So, of course, maybe we will see and we will hear a lot of new remarks about strengthening this type of weapons in Ukrainian hands. But on the other hand, we need to remember this is not the holistic solution for every problems they are dealing with.
All right, like you mentioned, there's two big topics on the agenda here. The one's the long-distance strike inside of Russian territory, and the other being the air defense system. Now, for the past couple of days, well, couple of weeks, when we see the incursion into the Kursk region with Russia not really kind of quote-unquote retaliating or escalating in a way that the Western countries are afraid of. This gave Zelensky a very good argument of why it is okay for the Ukraine to use these long-range weapons to strike inside Russia without any actual provocation. But the West still seems relatively reluctant to see that happen. And my question is if that also have to do with these countries' own domestic politics. Do you think that this might kind of make the electorate a little bit worried about actually being involved into the war?
I think there is a division between the analytical field, and I think most of Western states get very deep lessons learned about Russian repercussions, Russian repercussion in the context of striking against their targets or using some weapons. So I think governments really know that they do not afraid this Russian offensive in info sphere. But on the other hand, you mentioned a very important aspect, the population of various European states and also Western states. They are still afraid about Russian strong messages due to the nuclear weapons or some other repercussions. So I think we need to work with a Ukrainian partner, also with this format from the Ramstein airbase, but also from other formats to achieve main goals in the context of strategic communication with our societies. Of course, 2022, a large portion of emotions, very positive pro-Ukrainian emotions spread in various Western states. But right now, it is really difficult to have the same level of support inside societies. With deep striking of Russian bases, it is necessary to have this kind of resources for Ukrainian defense, because we know that without that, Russia can use effectively for instance, air domain by using some strategic bombers or other missile launchers. So they need to be under constant pressure from Ukraine side, but without Western weapons, it is impossible because the only Ukrainian production cannot afford to put all of the weapons need to be used by commanders, Ukrainian commanders, in their hands. So it's a very difficult time for Ukraine, for West, also for the questions about the future of this warfare.
All right. Some of these lack of enthusiasm or the lowering of enthusiasm in the general public, I think, do come from financial and fiscal concern. Do you think that there could be an argument to be made if Ukraine is allowed to strike into Russia and destroy the missile launchers? Maybe less money or less resources need to be dedicated on constantly trying to play whack-a-mole with the air defense systems.
I think we need to emphasize that without these capabilities, sharing with Ukrainian side, we will spend more money for strengthening our own capabilities. Because Russia is a threat not only for Ukrainian sovereignty, but also for sovereignty of various other Western states, also under the NATO umbrella. So I think we cannot discuss this issue by only using the Ukrainian case. We need to present more wider perspective. And I think all of military assistance we spend right now to strengthen Ukrainian capabilities, military capabilities, is something which is lowering our own spending when we think about the long-term deterrence of Russian aggressive posture against us. So I think that need to be a core of our debate with our societies and our citizens, and we need to emphasize this is not the emotional aspect. This is a very pragmatic way of thinking about the strategic position of West toward Russian policy, because with a strong Russia with capabilities to strike every Ukrainian city, they can still put the same pressure on Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, Poland, Romania, Bulgaria, other states, and they will. This is not the question. I think Russia with military capabilities, Russia with resources is a threat, is a constant threat, and a constant pressure on various states from the north to the south.
All right. So hopefully this message can be successfully conveyed and Ukraine should get the support it needs. Thank you so much for your input and insight. Thanks for being with us on TVP World.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
Cheers. And thank you for watching this edition of World Talks here on TVP World. But for more news and update, please stay tuned.